Well, hello, my dirty girls, and happy Tuesday. We are here for another Training Tuesday. So tonight we're going to talk about the fun themes of balance, integration, work-life balance, that elusive thing we're always looking for, right? How do we find the right balance between the amount of time and energy we're putting into work and the time and energy we have left over to do the things we want to do, right? To spend time with our family, to spend time with our friends and our loved ones, and just maybe spend a little time on ourselves. So tonight we're going to explore, what does it mean? What does it mean to have work-life balance? Is it work-life integration? My perspective, it's really just life. This is just how it is. This is what it is. So this has been a battle, right? This idea of work-life balance has been a battle for working women since they've entered the workforce. It's it's been a constant challenge for essentially anyone we would call modern woman. And hey, Joyce, how are you? It's good to see you. So I'm gonna give you some stats because what I want to give you guys tonight is a little bit of a backdrop behind tonight's conversation, and then we'll talk about this whole 5 steps. I think I promised you guys 5 steps to finding work-life balance, and but I want you to have a little bit of a backdrop for why this is even an issue because we struggle with this so much as working women. So if we go back to 1950, the workforce was 30% women. So right after World War II, right? Because that was really right, it was the wars. It was the world wars, World War I and World War II, that started really introducing women into the workforce. Right? We took on the factory jobs, we took on kind of keeping the country going while men were sent off overseas to fight battles. So in 1950, 30% of the workforce was women. By the time we hit 2000, right? So in the year 2000, it doubled to 60%. 60% of the workforce is women. In 2020, 50% of the workforce was women. So between 2000 and 2020, the number of women in the workforce decreased by 10%. So I want us to think about, like, what does that tell us? What does that tell us about the choices that we as women in the workplace need to make? What does it tell you about the choices that we are making? We decreased in an era where we as women have made huge strides when it comes to women reaching senior ranks, right? Higher ranks in organizations, becoming CEOs, running their own businesses. We have decreased our presence in the workforce in a time where we've become the more educated base. We are a highly educated base of women in the workforce. And yet, between 2000 and 2020, we were making decisions about our jobs and our place in the workforce that caused us to decrease our presence. I'm going to posit to you that one of the reasons that we were making this choice, one of the reasons we've decreased, is because we are indeed what we call the sandwich generation. We are, and this has been reinforced with COVID, we are the women who had to make choices about our place in the workforce and balance, right? We're talking about work-life balance, work-life integration, and balance family. And in the sandwich generation, families, it's not just childcare and partners, it's our parents, it's elder care. We're sandwiched between having to manage both. And women are making these choices. It's women making these choices, not men. It is not often that you hear men say that they're leaving their jobs or quitting their jobs because they're going to go take care of their elderly mother or they're going to stay home with the kids. Hey, Jackie, it's good to see you. So this dynamic was already in place when the pandemic hit. And so what happens when the pandemic hit? So in 2022, 50% of the women being part of the US workforce dropped to 46%. So in 2 years, right, between 2020 and 2022, we dropped from 50% to 46%. Globally, women alone lost 64 million jobs between 2020 and 2022. 64 million jobs, an impact of $800 billion. That's how much income women walked away from in the 2 years of the pandemic. $800 billion worth of income. Today, there are 2 million fewer women in the workforce than pre-pandemic. And just to get the perspective, in the US alone, over 5 million women lost their jobs due to COVID, specifically tied back to COVID. So, hi Jill, good to see you. So I wanted to share this as a backdrop to our conversation because I think these statistics about the decreasing presence of women in the workforce, despite our education, despite strides in conversations around gender equity and gender balance and pay equity and accessibility to higher ranks and the breaking of the glass ceiling, despite all of that, women are decreasing their presence in the workforce. And work-life balance is one of the reasons why, because when we are the primary caregivers, it's hard to also be the primary breadwinner. And we are currently in a work culture, in a work situation, where we are doing, when we walk into a role, not just the role we were hired for, we're doing the role of 2 or 3 or 4 other people, right? Number one reason I hear from women about why they're stressed and anxious and overworked, on that verge of burnout, is because they are doing far too many roles than just the role they were hired for. So you can't have work-life balance if you're working the equivalent of 2 to 3 full-time jobs at your current job and looking at how to take care of your parents, looking at how to take care of your kids, possibly still even doing some homeschooling. Right? Because we're still in a situation where when COVID breakouts happen in school, the kids are sent home. Understaffing is a very real challenge. To corporate world today, which is how we're ending up with us playing these roles, right? Playing these 3, 4, 5 jobs. Well, maybe 5 is an exaggeration, but maybe not for some of you, but definitely 2, 3, or 4 roles instead of just the one. And it's causing burnout so that we're choosing not to go back to work. We're choosing to say, I have other things to do. I have more priorities with my time, including spending time with my friends and family, taking care of my family. And we are burdened with the work, not men. We are not seeing men take up the slack. We certainly aren't seeing them take up the slack in the numbers that we see women doing it. So the first thing we want to tackle is defining what it is you want when you mean work-life balance. What is it that you want? So I'm going to pause for a minute because I didn't pause earlier to say hello and welcome. And I see we have Joyce and Jackie and Jill here, and welcome tonight. Oh, we got all 3 J's here tonight. Hey, check that out. Welcome to Training Tuesday. I am Natalie Hahn, CEO of Dirty Girls Consulting, and your coach tonight. And we are talking about work-life balance, work-life integration. How do we live with joy? How do we live powerfully? How do we feel like we're living our lives and making an impact and not carrying the guilt with us? Because when we start thinking about what it means to have work-life balance, what happens? All right, we start thinking about, I could use more of this. I could use less of that. So let's just say, for example, I could use more massages in my life. I could use more time in the hot tub. I could use less time studying spreadsheets. I could use less time in meetings. Oh my gosh, couldn't we all use less time in meetings? What happens if I were to skip a meeting and go get a massage done? You know what typically happens? Guilt. What typically happens is we start playing in our head all the things we think we should be doing instead, and how We really ought to be in that meeting. We really ought to be taking those notes. I really ought to be working on that project. And we talk ourselves out of the thing that we really want and need in that moment. And maybe it's a massage. Maybe it's just a quiet lunch without any technology on, but literally just sitting down and focusing on our food. Maybe we just need a nap for 30 minutes. We talk ourselves out of these things because we tell ourselves that this is more important. And that's the question we have to look at, right? When we say we want more work-life balance, when we say we want more joy and more power in our lives and less guilt, what is it that we need more of? So in the chat, ladies, what do you need more of? What do you need more of? And what do you need less of? If I were to I would love to see you guys drop in the chat. What do you need more of? What do you need less of? What I need more of in my life right now? I probably do need massages. I was using that as an example, and I'm not a huge massage person, but today is a rough day. Today is a day I need to be talking about work-life balance because I need to be kind of taking my own medicine. Today, I really could have used some time with massage or in a hot tub or just relaxing. I did take 15 minutes today. I did squeeze in 15 minutes in the middle of the day to just sit and meditate because I was feeling my anxiety start to spike. I did do that. But I could use more of that. I could use a little more yoga in my life. I haven't been doing as much yoga as I'm used to doing, and I'm feeling it. So there are choices for me to make, right? These are things that I'm looking at. What do I need less of? I need less of meetings. Jackie, more room for strategy, less busy work. Yes. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Exactly. So when we say that though, right? When we say more strategy, less busy work, when I say more time for yoga and meditation and fewer meetings, what we're really saying is that we need more time. What we're feeling is the lack of time for ourselves, for the things that we prioritize, for the people and the things that we feel are important and are our key priorities. And our most common complaint is, well, I'm doing the job of 2 or 3 people. My team is understaffed, and so I have to step in because until I can hire someone, I hear that a lot, until we hire someone, somebody has to do the work, right? Somebody has to pick up the slack or it won't get done. Joyce, more ability to prioritize projects to get things done and then to prioritize self-care when needed, right? And you hit the nail on the head of what we're going to talk about tonight because it is about priority, right? In our 5 steps to living a more joyful and powerful life, we take our power back through our prioritizing and following through on those priorities. And so we'll talk about that. What I want to address specifically, because this is what I hear a lot of, is this concept that if I don't do the work, no one else will. If I don't do the work, it's going to fall through the cracks. And that thought process is a trap. It is a really common trap, but it's a trap. And the trap is, the whole reason you need to hire more people is because there's that gap. And as long as you're filling the gap and no one is feeling the pain of that loss, the need to hire that person decreases. The longer you're doing their job, the job of the non-existent person because it's an empty role, or even the job of the person who's there and they just happen to not be doing their job because we've all worked with that person. But as long as you're taking on those other roles, you're essentially letting the company be comfortable with the fact that the job is getting done. Well, the job's getting done, so there's not a problem. You may not have an organization or a management team that is really paying that much attention to your level of burnout. And when we're burned out, 2 things happen, right? We go one of 2 routes when we burn out. One is we burn out and we just completely shut down. And so we're grinding, but our productivity is low and definitely our level of happiness is low. But we stay where we are because it's comfortable and we know it, but we're not happy. Or option 2, we are so burnt out and frustrated, we leave. Now, that's not your worst option, but if we've been in a situation where we've left a company because it ground us down, then we're probably not moving into a situation where we have time to recover ourselves and step in with a healthy mindset and a healthy approach. And in fact, we're at higher risk of getting ground down again at the next job because we already haven't figured out how to set up those boundaries to be successful. Those boundaries, those priorities that are going to allow us to have a healthy work-life balance. Because here's the thing, who is responsible for work-life balance? Who is responsible for your work-life balance? Jill, I'm not sure companies really care about an employee's burnout. Some of them don't, Jill. Some don't care. Some managers don't pay attention. Some of them don't know the signs. Some of them are so stressed themselves. I mean, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Some of them are so stressed themselves, they don't even recognize the burnout in others because they're already there. And some companies, you're right, some companies, they're not set up to deal with employee burnout. They're set up to make a profit. They're set up to make a profit at the lowest possible cost to them. And you doing 2 or 3 or more jobs is lower cost to them than hiring another body to do it. And you nailed it, Jill. You're absolutely right. The only person responsible, the only thing responsible for your work-life balance is yourself. Because you are the only person who can make those choices. So if you acknowledge and accept that you are the only person to manage your work-life balance, then the next question is, what are you willing to do to have it? Are you willing to take the steps? I'm going to talk about the 5 steps, but are you willing to take the steps necessary to do it? And I've said this about other things, and I'm going to say it about this as well. If you are not at a level of a 9 or a 10 of wanting to truly own your life, truly own having more joy, having more power, having more relaxation, having more fun in your life, then you're not going to make it happen. So if you're not at a 9 or a 10, I want you to think about what would get you there. What would get you to the 9 or the 10? Because when we are the only ones who are responsible for something, our drive for getting it done, right? Our motivation for getting it done is pretty much centered around 2 things. How badly do we want it? Or how much, I got to think about how I'm going to phrase that. How much are we feeling beholden to the person who wants it? So maybe it's not for me, but my boss does, or my partner does, or my children do. So even if it's not a high priority for me, if it's a really high priority for my kids, do I make it a high priority for me and make sure it happens? Yeah, I do. It's not my priority, but it's really important to my kid. So immediately it goes up on my priority list, right? So unless it's a 9 or a 10 for us around something we care about, for ourselves or for someone else that we care about, not going to happen. So here's what we're going to do. And yes, Jackie, you're absolutely right. This is the hardest thing for people pleasers to do, because when we're in that people pleasing mode, it is all about other people's priorities. I call that OPP, other people's priorities. And what we have to remember is that other people's priorities are only important to other people. They are not concerned with our priorities. They are not concerned with our needs or wants. And as much as we might resent that, they don't have to be, but we need to be. We need to be concerned with our needs and wants. We need to make it a priority, our own. So, 5 steps, right? 5 steps to living with power, living with joy, living without guilt. First and foremost is making that commitment to yourself. Are you a 9 or a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 of wanting to have that work-life balance, of wanting to, whatever balance is for you. I'm not even going to argue about whether it's balance, because balance implies that there's a 50-50 somehow, and there isn't. And some people need more family time, personal care, and some people really do need less, but everybody needs some. Everybody has their threshold of what they need that's going to make them happy, relaxed, comfortable in that flow of their own energy. So make the commitment to yourself that you are ready to own your schedule. You are ready to own what your own work-life balance looks like. And there's two things you need to do under step one. When you make the commitment to yourself, you need to write it down. What is it exactly that you're committing to? What is the commitment to yourself? Is the commitment to yourself more self-care? Is the commitment to yourself in self-care around physical exercise? Is it around pampering? Is it around being outside? Is it around eating healthier foods? Whatever your commitment is to that work-life balance, it's about more time with your kids. It's about more time with your partner. Write it down. What does your balanced life look like? Including work. What does your balanced life at work look like? What is your role at work? What is it focused on? So that's what you're doing at work, and then you come home and you do these things. And two is you need a commitment partner. You need an accountability partner who you're going to say, I'm focused on creating my work-life balance. Here are the things I'm going to bring more into my life. I need you to help me stay on track. Because when we say it out loud to someone else and we give that person permission to check in with us, I want you to ask me once a week. I want you to ask me twice a month. How am I doing? Did I do my massage this week? Did I go for a run? Whatever it is. But you need an accountability partner. When we say it out loud to someone else, we have made a commitment not just to ourselves, but also to someone else. And for those of us who are people pleasers, we're far better at keeping our promises to other people than we are to ourselves. So use your accountability partner as a way to commit your action to other people, not just you. So that's step one. Step two, drill down into the work goals and prioritize your work goals. Now, step 2 and 3 are really about work, and I want you to focus on these because this is where we get out of balance. Very few times, it does happen, but very few times do I have women coming to me and saying, I need more work-life balance because I'm spending far too much time taking care of my kids. Spending far too much time running around for my mom. And it happens, right? That life side of work-life balance can take over, and we have those days. But I have very few women come to me consistently saying, my personal life is overrunning my work life. It is usually the other way around. We are giving up our personal life in order to sustain our work life. So step 2 is prioritize your work goals. Now, what do I mean by your work goals? Yes, your boss is going to give you goals and say, these are the targets you need to hit. Fine, hit those targets. What I want you to think about is, if you were to leave this job tomorrow, what would you want to put on your resume for what you accomplished at this job? What goes on the resume? That's what you need to focus on at work. If you are at work and working on 3 or 4 projects, and one of these projects is the one that you think moves the needle in terms of getting you further in your career, it takes you in the direction of where you want your career to go. It's something that you would absolutely put on your resume the day the project's done. That's where you focus your energy. So prioritize your work goals according to, yes, what you need to hit, according to what your boss has laid out in terms of key metrics, right? KPIs or whatever it is. But also, what's important to you in terms of your career direction. Write down what those goals are. And once again, you need to publish those. You're going to share those goals with your accountability partner. And then step 3 is you're going to share those goals with your boss, and you're going to focus on only those goals. Whoever your boss, your manager, your team is, whoever it is that has some influence and sway over what you spend your time on during the day, you need their buy-in. Listen, I mapped out the 3 projects I'm working on, and I just want to get your consent and buy-in that of these 3 projects, here's their priority. Here's project 1, it's my highest priority. Here's project 2, it's my next highest. Here's project 3, it's my least priority, and I'm going to work on it. But honestly, 1 and 2 are going to come first, because if I can get those out of the way, then I can focus on the next and focus on the next. And you want to get your boss's agreement on what your priorities are. Now, this is assuming you have a fairly reasonable boss who's going to look at your workload and your projects and agree that you should be prioritizing. Because at the end of the day, you only have so many hours. And so do they. If you have a boss who is unreasonable in this regard, then actually that's a different conversation that we need to have, and you need to reach out to me after this training, and we need to have that conversation. Because part of work-life balance, yes, it's influenced by work, but you own your time. You still own your time. You may commit your work that they own you from 8 to 5, and you're going to prioritize what you do between 8 and 5, but anything beyond that is yours to own. And if you choose to give it to work, that's up to you. But that's not your boss's choice. That's not the company's choice. That's your choice. So step 1, make the commitment to yourself that you're going to do this. Step 2, prioritize what the work goals are according to what your key metrics are and what you want to do with your career, where you want to go. 3, focus on just those goals and get the buy-in from your boss, right? Talk to management, whoever you need to say, here's my focus, here's how I'm approaching it, and get support inside your company for your focus. Step 4, learn how to say no and learn how to say yes. So you want to learn how to say no, because there are things, if you have 3 projects that are your priority, and there's project 1, project 2, project 3, project 4 is a big fat no. It doesn't happen. There's no bandwidth, there's no time, it's not a priority. If you have a hard time saying no, if you have a hard time narrowing down the priorities, then I want to invite you to practice saying no with the little things. Little things. Practice saying no to an extra cup of coffee. Practice saying no to dessert when it's offered to you at dinner. Practice saying no in little baby step ways so that you get more comfortable with not only saying the word no, but recognizing that the response is typically acceptance. You have to practice saying no to the cup of coffee, to the dessert, to a night out with friends, to things that you might ordinarily want, but you really just don't have time for, or it doesn't fit in with what you're doing right now, so that you can then say no to joining that extra committee, to joining that extra project, to taking on that extra work because a coworker doesn't have time for it and they really, really, really just need a favor. And we want to say yes because we want to help our coworkers, but you know what? You don't have time either. So we have to say no. And we say it with love and we say it with good intention, but we say no. And remember that every time you say no, you're also saying yes. When you say no to taking on, well, let's start small. Excuse me. When you say no to the extra cup of coffee, or you say no to the dessert, excuse me, what you're saying yes to is better health. When you say no to that night out with friends, you'd love to go, but you're just really tired, or you want to spend time with your partner or with your kids, it's because you're saying yes to your partner and your kids. When you say no to joining that committee or taking on that extra project, it's because you're saying yes to what you've already identified as the priorities in your work life. You're saying yes to project number 1. You're saying no to project number 4. So anytime you say no and you find yourself getting stuck, I want you to invert it and say, by declining this, by saying no to this, what am I actually saying yes to? Because every time you say no, you are saying yes to something else. So what is it? Identify what that is. That's step 4. Step 5, when it comes to the personal time, when it comes to gardening club or pottery night or yoga class or going to the masseuse or date night with your partner or a play night with your kids, when it comes to any of those, book it. Here's the thing with personal time that helps us keep our own promises to ourselves about work-life balance. We need to be specific about what it is that we're doing. If we are specific that I need more personal time, so I'm going to do X, we're more likely to keep that appointment, to keep that schedule, to keep that date, than to simply say, I just need more personal time. Okay, so take personal time. But you haven't defined what you're going to do with it. And if you don't have a defined activity, you're so much less likely to do it, because guess what? Work always has a defined activity for you. There is always another email to read. another report to go through, another blog to edit, another something at work that's clearly defined that you can do so that you keep on going. We need to look at our personal activities, right? A class we sign up for, a hobby that we really want to spend time with, people that we really want to spend time with, and be specific. Wednesday night, I'm going to spend 2 hours at dinner and coffee with my best friend. Boom, book it on the calendar. You treat your personal time and your personal appointments just like you would treat your work appointments. Because when we make an appointment and we make it a commitment and we block out the time is there for that. We've carved it out already. Now we just have to follow through. And in order to ensure that you're going to follow through, what are you going to do? You're going to tell your accountability partner. It really helps to have someone else holding your hand through this process. Because that person can remind you, what are your priorities? What is it that you really want out of your life? If you give up on this personal time and do the work thing, how are you going to make that up to yourself later? Right? Our friends, who typically is who becomes our accountability partners in these exercises, they're the ones who aren't afraid to ask us the hard questions. What do you think you're doing? Why do you think you're doing that? Why is this suddenly not important to you anymore? And when you have to defend why you're working 60 hours a week and not spending time with your kids or your partner or watercolors or anything else that you want to do, now you have to say it out loud. All of the rationalization that we do in our heads, it's not nearly so powerful when we say it out loud. So here's the thing. I had a note here that I wanted to be sure I asked you guys about. Here's the thing. Did I write it down here? Oh, yes, I did. I wrote it down and then I forgot to tell it to you. When you say yes or no, right? When you say no, which really means yes, here's the other thing I want you to do. I want you to play out the worst case scenario. What's the worst that will happen? We work that other job or those 2 other jobs to support our current job because we have this worst case scenario that if we don't pick up all the slack, we're going to get fired. That's what we think. We're going to get fired. Our boss is going to yell at us. We're going to have an uncomfortable conversation. We're going to have a very uncomfortable meeting. We're going to lose our jobs. And we can't afford to lose our jobs, otherwise we wouldn't be working. Play out that worst case scenario. I always say there's 2 questions with worst case scenarios. How real is it? How real is that scenario? And then what's really going to happen? If you are working on the work projects that are the priority for the business and that are the priority in terms of your career growth, and you did get fired tomorrow, what could you put on your resume? Well, if you're already following your priorities, you can put on your resume that you worked on these projects that you know are taking you in the direction you want to go now that you're job hunting again. So, when you're looking at worst case scenario, play it out. Play it out and then play out what would you do if you got fired tomorrow. What would you do? What are the first 3 things you would do if your boss came in today and said, I'm sorry, we have to let you go? You spend tonight crying in your bottle of wine, you call your friends, you bitch about how much you hate the job. What do you do tomorrow? You update your resume, you get on LinkedIn, you get on Indeed, you contact your entire network. You have a plan. Make a plan for the worst case scenario. Jackie says, those are the people that hardly ever get fired. The ones that think they might. Absolutely true. It's because you are a conscientious worker with integrity that you're not going to get fired. It's also because you will find that most companies, you have to push pretty far to do something that actually has them fire you, because firing you costs them money. And when we're already at companies that are short-staffed, it will cost them even more money and even more productivity to get rid of you than it will to simply hire more help or understand that you're not going to get the thing done because not enough hours in the day. And oh, by the way, your clarinet lessons are far more important. And they are. So let me just recap, because I threw that in with this. Make the commitment to yourself and get an accountability partner and write down your goals. That's 1. Commitment to yourself. Commitment to yourself includes writing it down and getting an accountability partner. Step 2, prioritize your work. Prioritize it according to the goals you're supposed to hit. Prioritize it according to the projects and goals that are going to help you make your resume amazing. Step 3, focus on just those goals. Get the buy-in from your boss that these are the priorities, so that is where you're going to focus. And remember that they need you at that job more than you need them. Step 4, learn how to say no and what you're saying yes to. Because every time you say no, you're also saying yes. Practice with little no's. Make them bigger and bigger as you go. Play out that worst case scenario. I say no, what's the worst that's going to happen? Play that out. And then play out, what am I going to do when the worst happens? Have your plan. We always feel more comfortable when we have our backup plan. And step 5, treat your personal time the way you treat your work time on your calendar. Make appointments. Be specific about what you're doing with the time. Even if all you write is 7 p.m. Tuesday night Netflix. It's on your calendar. You are far more likely to keep that appointment than you are when 7 p.m. rolls around and you're like, I could read 2 more emails. I could read that report. I'm just going to jump online for a minute. Nope. When your calendar says it's time for Netflix, it's time for Netflix. All right. So that's what I had to share with you tonight. Those 5 steps. These 5 steps are all about priority and boundary setting. And priorities and boundary setting are empowering. It's where we get our personal power from. We don't get it from anyone else. We don't get it from anywhere else. We get it for living up to the things, the goals that we set up for ourselves. So when it comes to living with more joy, and when it comes to living without guilt, it's because we know, right? The whole guilt piece is because we're worried about letting other people down. When we create our work-life balance plan, we are making sure we are not letting ourselves down. And when we're not letting ourselves down, we have a lot more energy to give other people to support them too. So it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes other people are going to have to be let down so that you can support yourself. And that's okay. We are not responsible for everyone else's happiness. And part of being able to let that go is knowing that you are making empowering choices every day. Empowering yourself to live the life the way you want to live it. Hey, I am glad Training Tuesdays are on your calendar, Jackie. It should be on everybody's calendar. This is time for yourself. This is what I call self-love time, because this is time that we are literally here just to talk about you. Just to talk about what's going on with you at work, what's going on with you at home, what are the things we can focus on and incorporate, right? Tools and strategies we can incorporate into our lives every day, every week, to make them a little bit better. So thank you for that. Oh, Joyce does too. That's fantastic. See, I love you guys. I love you guys. All right. As always, you want to talk more about work-life balance. You want to talk about setting up your calendar and your reminders. You want to work on making more powerful choices. Drop the word dig in the comments. Let's have a Dirty Girl mini dig. It's a short coaching conversation, and we will work on you and your goals and your priorities and your boundaries. Most important, we will get you moving one step closer in the direction that you want to go. That is the whole point of the Dirty Girl mini dig, is to focus on you for a short coaching conversation where we get you one action step closer to achieving your goals. And to set that up, all you have to do is drop the word dig in the comments, and I will reach out to you and we will get that scheduled. Thank you again for joining me for Training Tuesday. Thank you, ladies, tonight for your interaction and chat and for sharing this with me. I love seeing you guys every Tuesday. I hope you guys have a fabulous week, and I will be talking with you soon.